So thank you for joining. We have some great news to share. And so in our meeting today, what we'll find out is that Director Welcher, Hawthorne Welcher, and his team over at the Housing and Community Development Department, they will update us on plans. I know that most of you have heard in the media of our plans to build a non-congregate shelter. And we wanted to make sure that on this line today that everyone had facts surrounding that intention. And then we also have an update on our action plan committee that we spoke of at our last task force meeting, as well as some other items. And so we're going to jump right along into our agenda for the day. The first item for us to discuss, and this is just simply for discussion, I would love for everyone to kind of chime in on this. At our last task force meeting, just as a recap, we formed, we took reports from the working groups, and one suggestion that was made was that we look into taking some trips to see what other cities have been able to do around homelessness. I know Ms. Kane had been speaking with some folks in other cities. I think a few other you have were involved in conversations as well. And so I wanted to get everyone's opinion as far as going on some trips. I know we were invited to come down to Savannah by a homeless provider partner. They want us to come down and see their tiny home village. I know that some working groups brought back recommendations on a tiny home village. And so they have a brand new tiny home village that they built for veterans, and they have invited us to come down to see their development. Outside of that, I think we also discussed briefly the possibility of going to Columbus to see their shelter, as well as East South Carolina to view Opportunity Village. So I wanted to just poll the members of the task force today to see if there was an appetite to go see some other developments to draw off of. So I'll pause there and just take any comments or questions that anyone may have. And if you don't have questions or comments, what I will do is create a doodle of some possible dates and get it sent out to all of the task force members as far as trips go. Okay, so like I said, I'll pause there. I'll take a couple questions or comments or concerns, and then we'll move from that point. Does anyone have anything to add to that conversation?
I have a couple.
Okay, if you hit that, if you just tap that microphone button on your camera,
Okay.
unmute yourself. Just, okay, we're gonna come back. Okay, let me come back. Do we have any other questions or anything about that item?
Mr. Jordan, I think Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
I think that would be a great idea. I think that'd be a great idea to go and see what other cities are doing. One of the things we can look at also is, let's not try to reinvent the wheel where we have some cities that are doing great things to deal with their homeless population. And if we could just take what works, take a program and then tweak it so it fits our needs, I think that'll be great instead of us trying to reinvent the whole wheel. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, and so Ms. Gordon, you had a comment?
Yeah, I do. I also think it's a great idea, but with these particular cities and their programs, my question is this: do they have programs that have been innovative, that are doing some things that have not been done before? I guess the essence of what I'm asking is this: do they have success stories?
Well, I think a critical piece to the puzzle in making sure that we have those stories on file is going by there to where they are and having those conversations. I think that one of the more interesting parts about what we're trying to accomplish is that, like Ms. Kane said, other areas around our state certainly have had success with homelessness and sheltering. I'm not sure if anyone on the line can speak to that, but I think that at the end of the day, it would be advantageous for us to get on the road and kind of go see some developments. Does anyone have anything to speak on that? Can anyone vouch for any of the success of these programs? I think that once we go there, we'll definitely be able to see what they've done.
Jordan,
Ms.
one
Kane,
of the
yes.
things, and my folks remind me I'll go back to my hometown and they said, but they have more money, in which they do. But their programs that they have out of there, how they're dealing with those that are homeless, that are on drugs. What are the criteria to where if you come into one of these homes where they set you up, what is the criteria for you staying there? What kind of programs do you have to go through to get off the drugs and the alcohol? And one of the things that they had set up that just really intrigued me more than anything was a homeless authority, and how that homeless authority works, and how everything is centrally located in one place instead of being spread all up and down one street like we are. You know, you got something down on the far end, the east boundary, then you got something down on the far end, the Broad Street. Everything that the homeless need is right there. So they can get the assistance that they need, from the showers to the laundromats, to the food, to getting their driver's license, their birth certificates, having mailboxes. How does that all come together? And since we're talking about building a facility, we need to know these things before we even attempt to build something and we don't have an idea what's really out there. So there are some places that have success stories. Again, I think we just need to go back and tweak what we need for ourselves and that are doing great things. We just got to go out there and find them.
Completely agree. Ms. Bars, I see you've been recognized. You have to unmute. You muted, Ms. Bars. Still muted.
Okay.
There you go.
Yay. Well, I just want to say something from my 70, almost 3-year-old perspective, and that is all that glitters is not gold. And we need to find best practice programs if we're going to look at something. And that's kind of what Ms. Georgia said, the same thing. We need to find programs that are best practice, that are doing it right and doing it well if we're going to be traveling. So.
And while we're on this topic, this is a good opportunity to move to our next item. You know, at our last task force meeting, we agreed to form an action plan committee, and that committee would be tasked with going to the table and figuring out exactly what works around homelessness, specifically for Augusta. And since that last meeting, we have been able to form that committee. And I want to just take a moment to announce the members of that committee. The members of the Action Plan Committee, most of you have already agreed to be a part of that. So thank you. So the members of that committee will consist of myself, Commissioner Dennis Williams, Director Hawthorne Welcher, Director Tamika Allen, Christopher Mullins, Kelly Thorpe, Jody Huff, Venus Kane, Ms. Barbara Gordon, Tamara Toogood, Chief Clayton, Mary Harrison, Captain Jonathan Raymer, and Major Amanda Raymer, both with the Salvation Army. And again, if you would like to serve on that committee, I think it's not too late to tell me that you want to serve on the committee. We can make adjustments to that, but that is the Action Plan Committee as it stands. And I'll give you a quick update on the next steps towards this Action Plan Committee before we move on to hear from Director Welcher on the non-congregate shelter update and plan. The idea for this Action Plan Committee is to put together just what the name of that committee is, an action plan. We know what the issues are. We know who the homeless are. We know what issues we need to solve around homelessness. We need to get a plan on paper. And with that being said, the Action Plan Committee will begin to meet during our next month's meeting. I'm going to attempt to do something about the feedback if you all give me a. Okay, the Action Plan Committee will meet at at next month's meeting in the place of the task force. So the main task force will not meet again until after the Action Plan Committee has had an opportunity to meet and bring back recommendations. So the next meeting, the third Thursday in July, will be the first meeting of the Action Plan Committee at 2:00. And they will meet as much as they need on third Thursdays at 2 p.m. To discuss the action plan. After the action plan has been formed, we will then come back together as a main task force to receive the information that the Action Plan Committee has put forward. After they have done that, and we've had opportunity to look at it, to adjust to do the necessary work. We'll be ready to take it before the commission for presentation and prayerfully for consideration and approval. Okay. Are there any questions around the action plan committee, meeting dates, meeting times? What I'd also like to add to that conversation is there's an appetite to meet in person. So I think we're all ready to get back to seeing each other in person. So Action Plan Committee, congratulations, you get to meet in person. And so what we'll be doing within the next few days, I'll be working with staff in our municipal building to secure a location for that task force meeting, for that Action Plan Committee meeting. So please be watching your emails to see that location update. All right. So again, I'll say the Action Plan Committee will begin meeting on the third Thursday of July at 2 p.m. in person. Yay. At a location that we will confirm here shortly. They will meet every third Thursday until they feel like they have it ready to present to the main task force. Once the main task force has, had an opportunity to see that plan, make adjustments, we will then take that plan to the commission so that we can move forward with plans. All right. Any questions? All righty. Well, if there are no further questions on that discussion, we are prepared to hear from our Housing and Community Development Department with the update on the non-congregate shelter plan. But before we do that, I would like to give an opportunity to just to welcome to this meeting today. She's not a member of the task force, but she's working with a group of school-age students here in Richmond County as far as a project-based learning project around homelessness. They're trying to figure out how homelessness can be eradicated and how infectious diseases can be controlled and not spread throughout our homeless community. So I want to just welcome and thank Ms. Deja Johnson for being on board. She's working with a group of young folks who will be bringing some recommendations back in the near future. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank her and welcome her to the meeting before we introduce our Housing and Community Development Department. So Ms. Johnson, thank you for what you're doing, and we look forward to hearing from you. All righty, so let's move on to our next item. So you've all heard the news that we have plans to build something nice in Richmond County. And there are a lot of questions around what's going on, where this shelter will be, what's the point of the shelter. Who better to talk about this than the folks who are involved in it? Director Hawthorne Welcher, his team at Housing and Community Development. I'll pass the floor down to Director Welcher, and he will take us from here.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson, and good afternoon to everybody. So I once again, we definitely welcome the opportunity to sort of speak. I'm definitely not going to belabor the point with things that have already been said. One thing that I will say, I think is very, very important to show you exactly how far we have to go is, of course, we all are familiar with the story of the Clarion Hotel there on Washington Road just this past couple of days. And I was asked by some of the senior leadership what I thought about it. And one of the main statements that I made, and I talked to Commissioner Johnson about this morning, and I think we shared in like kind, is the fact that we have to be sure that we don't criminalize homelessness. Just because persons were, in my opinion, perceived to be doing things that were deficient doesn't mean that they did that because they were homeless. And I think that with that really said a lot for me. I heard definitely Ms. Kane speak about, for me, we definitely, when we speak HCD, when we speak to homelessness and sheltering, we don't speak to homeless shelter, but we speak to homeless instituting. That's what we're doing. And I think from that standpoint, that is sort of like the vision that we want to sort of try to lead and help in cohesion with, of course, our senior leadership, is that we don't need to speak to shelter, but we do need, as Ms. Kane just spoke about, and Ms. Gordon spoke about, we want to be sure that we are intaking and processing and putting back out as model citizens. So that's the vision and the mission of what we're trying to get accomplished. So, how do we get there? I think from that standpoint, my manager, Daniel Evans, is ready to talk about three things. So 3 things that he'll mention here today on this call. One, he'll just give you an update on what we took before the commission. He'll talk about a non-congregate homeless shelter, what it is. And then he'll speak to a presentation that we are putting together but he'll talk about the 3 to 5 areas of focus that we're going to take to the action plan committee for discussion. We want to make a presentation to them first to say, hey, these are 3 or 5 areas as we go about this task, 3 or 5 areas that we need to concentrate on. And once we answer these 3 to 5 areas, it will help mold exactly the comprehensive homeless shelter in itself. So let me just turn it over to Manager Evans. He'll speak to these 3 points.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, as was mentioned by Commissioner Johnson and Director Welcher at a recent commission meeting, our department took before the governing body the opportunity that was provided to Augusta, Georgia through the American Rescue Plan, utilizing a source of from Housing and Urban Development known as the Home Investment Partnership Program, with a completely new program type that they made available specific to the American Rescue Plan, which is, you've heard mentioned, the ability to acquire and develop a non-congregate shelter. It's a fancy way of saying, you know, a temporary stay facility that has individualized units versus open area congregate shelters, as we are typically familiar with in the homeless space, such as our Salvation Army Center of Hope. The specific guidance still has not been released by Housing and Urban Development, but we know that following the baseline rules that are in place through HUD's other program that does on homeless services, the Emergency Solutions Grant, we should be able to develop a facility that will add to Augusta's inventory of affordable housing. You know, that's often missed in this conversation is that at the bottom of your affordable housing spectrum is your emergency accommodation, your ability to provide shelter at little or no cost to any person in your community that's experiencing unsheltered homelessness. So we do have some hopes that we can develop a project in unison with this group and working with our local commission that will produce units that meet immediate need and are designed in a way to provide long-term flexibility to complement the gaps that exist along the spectrum of our affordable housing resource chain. So as Director Welcher said, we plan to take to the Action Plan Committee a conversation that focuses really on 3 high-level issues that need to be determined. All that has been determined so far is that approximately $2.2 million of the award that was to Georgia will be dedicated to this purpose for the acquisition and development of a non-congregate shelter. And so the Action Plan Committee, in my understanding, will be the body that helps, based on our engagement with Commission, will be the body that helps determine, as I mentioned, 3 high-level issues to be nailed down in the pre-development stages for this process. So those 3 issues that I'll just, again, scratch the surface on today will be site location. You know, where does it geographically fit within Augusta, Georgia? As I always like to say, the 307 square miles that are the beauty of Augusta, Richmond County, to include the cities of Hepzibah and Blythe, as well as where does it fit in terms of the socioeconomic need? Where does it come into play with the existence of already in place social service provision, both mainstream and homeless specific within Augusta, Georgia, as well as access to just normal amenities like public transit, access to schools, like that of that nature. The second major issue for us to all consider on behalf of the community will be, what does an operational partner for such a development look like? Who has the expertise, the skills, the wherewithal, and the capacity to provide what is essentially a 24/7 resource of a certain nature, right? That is a very complicated component that needs to be under consideration prior to development of this facility. And then lastly, but not least, and probably most important in all honesty, is the sustainability. You know, what does operational capacity for this look like? How are we able to leverage existing resources and bring in new stakeholders to ensure the long-term viability? And again, how do we ensure that this resource, once developed, maintains the agility necessary to meet the need for affordable housing, all the way from emergency situations up to long-term palliative care that's needed by some folks in our community, the fancy HUD term that we use that we're often talking about in this conversation, our chronically homeless population. So again, with the understanding that the utilization of these federal funds will require the incorporation, of Augusta, Georgia's procurement standards and our legal processes, we really want community buy-in outside of those sort of guidelines or restrictions, if you will. We don't have carte blanche to do as we entirely please. There will be federal laws with federal dollars that have to be followed, but they are nimble in and of themselves when it comes to this. And the further guidance that we look to receive from Housing and Urban Development for the utilization of these funds specifically should not hinder anything that we're used to in the space for those of us that work with homeless service programming through entities like our ESG program here in Augusta. So we're really excited at this opportunity. There's a resource gap that has existed, again, as I keep speaking about, on the lower end of our affordable housing spectrum, that has not grown. I've been with the department almost 8 years now, learning from some of the great people on this call across those full 8 years. And we have, as we continue to seek to serve the need that is continuing to grow in our community, we don't see the resource grow. And very rarely, very, very rarely, is Augusta, Georgia afforded an opportunity to make use of federal dollars in an effort to do something like this. Our typical ESG allocation that you heard me speak to that provides funding to Augusta, Richmond County for services for the homeless is about $150,000 per year. And so this opportunity to invest upwards of $2.2 million in the development of a single site location is unprecedented in my time here. I know some of you have been here much longer than me, but we want to make sure that we capture the lightning in the bottle. There's an opportunity, and that's where I speak to the agility of the resource and making sure that it gets designed in a way that its utilization can grow as our community grows and our response to the homeless issue in Augusta grows as well. So with that said, Commissioner Johnson, if there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain them. But if not, we look forward to the upcoming meeting with the Action Plan Committee to really get through the nuts and bolts of this.
Thank you, Manager Evans. And I want to also thank Director Welcher. I'll echo what you said. You said that very rarely do we have opportunities to take this type of funding from the federal government to do something this substantial in our community. And so, with everything that we've seen going on within the past few months around this whole notion of affordable housing, around the moratorium on evictions expiring, all of the headlines that you're reading, we have a unique opportunity to really deliver, in my opinion, something that is very transformational for this city. So I really do want to thank you all for your efforts around this. And at this point, I would love to open the floor for any questions or comments or concerns that anyone on the committee would have surrounding the plans for this non-congregate shelter. So if you would like to ask a question, just wave at the screen and we'll recognize you.
Commissioner Johnson, before you do that,
Yes.
let me just say one thing. So one thing that Daniel stated that I want to be sure that everybody clearly understands, that we will be prepared at that first action plan meeting to make a presentation. Based on those 3 areas, we'll also try to provide, Ms. Kane and Ms. Gordon, as you've spoken, try to provide a couple, as well as Linda, some best practices, understanding the fact that this is a all-inclusive, this is not a HCD led. We just may be sort of, maneuvering along, but at the same time, we want to be sure that we're not just going to provide you with a blank canvas, but we do want to invoke the conversation, based on partnerships that we have across the Southeastern region and the country. So based on those 3 areas, when we start talking about locality, we'll basically say, hey, these are what we feel A, B, C, D, and E are respective localities, based on certain services that need to be in the immediate vicinity. And likewise for the 2 focus areas as well. So I want to be sure that you all know that it will be an in-depth presentation that we'll provide to help further us along and get to where we need to get to rather quickly.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or any comments to add into the conversation? Ms. Bars, you're muted. You're muted still. We can't hear you.
Unmute.
There you go.
There we go. I'm learning this stuff. 2 things. The first one is, I think my name was left off the list because I received an invitation, and I'm very excited about that, of being part of the Action Plan Committee. And the second thing is, this is something that is critically needed for homeless services. So I'm just really excited about it.
And you are absolutely correct, Ms. Bars. I apologize. You are part of the Action Plan Committee. Thank you. I don't know why I missed over your name. I'm sorry. Any other comments to add to the conversation? All right. I thought for sure there would be more comments or questions about these plans. Chief Clayton, all right, you're recognized. You're muted.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things I think we should make, and I talked to you during my vacation about some of the businessmen calling and stuff like that. And as far as messaging, so we're all on the same sheet of music. That's something that the Action Command Committee can figure out is what kind of parameters are we going to set? Because there was a big outcry and a fear that we're going to become like a metropolis where we attract homelessness or a homeless population, and we've got to avoid that too. But I do think in terms of messaging, if you get contacted by the business people, say that's not the purpose of this, and we're going to flesh it out.
Thank you, Chief. And and to reiterate, the purpose of the Action Plan Committee, along with the purpose of the task force, I don't want folks to think that this committee or the government as a whole is trying to reinvent the wheel. The purpose here of this Action Plan Committee and the task force is to just define what we're doing, is to define the background of the task force, the purpose and the mission of our task force. We have to define homelessness as it relates to Augusta, back that up with data. We need to identify the key issues, and the working groups have done a great job in doing that. That action plan will consist of short-term, long-term, and midterm goals. And it also consists of the plans for the non-congregate shelter. So, the point here is that the work that needs to be done around homelessness, we all have our opinions. We've all had our own experiences, but this is our opportunity right here to put something on paper to start, again, delivering for this community. So again, I really do want to give my appreciations to everyone for your willingness to go into this direction. The Action Plan Committee meetings, of course, will be public meetings, so anyone can attend. But please put the best effort into to craft a plan that we'll all be proud of, so that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we'll be able to look back and say that Augusta's homeless population is better off because of the work that we were able to collaboratively do together. And so I'm excited. I am extremely excited, and I look forward to hearing from everyone and seeing the good work that comes out of these efforts. Are there any other questions or comments towards these matters? All righty. Well, listen, this has been a quick meeting. I told you that we're going to have a quick meeting today. I think we're all ready to get down to the nitty gritty with the Action Plan Committee. So if there are no other questions or comments or any concerns for the good of the order, I will see you all on the third Thursday in July for our first Action Plan Committee meeting. Okay. Thank you all, and please take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.